What is going on, everybody? Welcome to an all-new episode of TAETRO Talks. Thank you all so much for being here today. First stream in a while. I know I've been away for a bit, and this is the first stream back. And I'm excited that it's the first stream back, and we are doing TAETRO Talks for Season 2 of 343 TV, which hopefully you saw some new graphics on the stream today. And if you saw new graphics on yesterday's stream with Daltrick, with Claire, you know we got a new look going on and really great shows lined up for you every single day of the week on 343 TV. Today's a special show, of course, because it's our one interview show of this series. So if you don't know, my name is TAETRO. I'm an electronic musician. I'm a controllerist. And what that fits in perfectly is with our guest today, who, if some of you don't know, is the founder of Artiphon, who makes these really cool instruments. I'm sure some of you recognize them. We've got the Instrument 1, which is sort of this guitar-style controller that you can strum, you can play drums on, you can play it like a normal fretboard, you can bow it basically like a viola or something like that. And then more recently, we've got the Orba, which I've been doing some videos with, hopefully you all have seen, which has the ability to be its own standalone instrument and looper, and then also is a very, very expressive MIDI controller as well. Wireless, Bluetooth, all that. And what you notice about these instruments, is that these are very different looking controllers than the typical, what you see behind me, keyboard controllers. And that's why I was really excited to bring Mike, who we'll talk to in a bit, on today, because I want to get into the world of designing new controllers that aren't just the typical 25 key MIDI keyboard with pads and knobs, and what it's like to be designing instruments in 2020. I think that's really cool. And I see a lot of folks over in the chat. So happy to have you all. Thank you all for joining in. Nishark, what is going on? Sammy Gamer, hello. My mom is in the chat. Ari Gelman, what's up? We have the Chosen One, Christian Vasquez, what's up? Thank you for being here. AB, and a friend that uses Cyrillic letters I can't really read, but hello, thank you for being here. Emmett, nice to see you, welcome, and Bueno, and Tyra. I'm monitoring the chat on my channel, but you could also be watching live on 343's YouTube channel, which I also encourage you to do. But if you have direct questions as the stream goes on today, make sure you drop them in the chat. And do check out daily programming on youtube.com/343labs. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But for now, what I think would be really cool is if we get into it with our guests. So let's bring in our friend Mike from Artiphon. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hi.
I'm so happy to have you.
Here.
Thank you for coming on. I know that the chat and the community is probably excited for this talk. It's a different kind of interview than we normally do. We usually have like artists or of course you are an artist for sure, but like people directly like in the making music business, which I'm sure you do as well. But I'm excited to expose the community to somebody who is making instruments. I think that's the most exciting part about today. What's cool and what I kind of want to start with is maybe how do you define yourself and what you do? I always ask this of, the artists that we have on too. It's like, how do you define yourself? Are you a content creator? Are you a musician? Are you whatever? So I think on your level, you can probably answer this in many different ways. But Mike, founder of Artiphon, how do you define yourself in this 2020 music and technology world?
That's a great opening question. I used to be a musician, on the road and songwriter and all that. I went to school for this kind of stuff, and then I ended up doing graduate work in technology and sound and theory and all that. So I've kind of, even before getting into musical instrument design, got to play with a few identities there.
Yeah.
And be creative in those different ways. I think these days, for me, what's really driving me and therefore kind of defining what I do, I think is this aspect of design that's about empowering other people to be creative. Like I've been able to be creative in my life. I grew up playing violin and I learned how to use these tools. But then really the challenge that I'm taking on now is how to bring that same kind of creative empowerment to other people. So I think the simple answer would be I see myself as a designer of creative experiences
Wow.
for people, that can take the form of more traditional musical instrument type stuff, but then getting into very new territories of what we can redefine as musically creative, that aren't just, which instrument do you play and what genre do you play, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's an amazing definition. This designer of, the creative tools. I wonder, can you tell us a little bit about like when was the moment where you were like, oh, all these instruments that already exist, they're fine, but what if, there was something different? Like what if I could create something different? Was there a spark for you? Did you meet somebody that was like, oh, you could make that idea that you have? Like what's that origin story there?
Well, you kind of nailed it. So I was living in Nashville. This was about 10 years ago, and I had just finished my PhD, where I was studying sound and philosophy and technology and all this stuff. So I was very heady and, publishing and doing that whole academic thing and teaching at the time. And I met a friend named Dave, and he had just left a consumer electronics company where they designed all kinds of accessories and lifestyle stuff and all that. And so we just totally, just dove in together, crazy, coffee and drinks and all kinds of conversations. And as we got to talking, I realized that, I was tossing out these ideas that were coming from my research, but then were really about applying it to culture. It wasn't like research for its own sake. It was like, yeah, well, this concept that has actually been going on for hundreds of years, and, you know, uh, Facebook or whatever, social media kind of thing, like they kind of converge, and maybe we could do this. And he was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And so, he would toss out ideas, and pretty soon we actually started a design firm together to try to realize some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So we designed products for other people. The actual, like, the classic Nashville moment though did actually happen for me. It was about 10 years ago. I was at a dinner party with some friends behind their house, and this was a very rare thing. The house did not contain any musical instruments,
In
and this was
Nashville.
Nashville, which was
Wow.
very weird. Yeah, she was an artist, a visual artist, and so it wasn't her thing. Anyway, there were a couple of musicians in the backyard, and so we were like, let's let's sing our songs to each other. Let's just do the kind of campfire thing. And nobody had an instrument, so I was like, oh well, let's just get out our phones, and everyone laughed.
Yeah,
And I mean, this was so fresh at the time, thinking
totally.
about this stuff. So I was like, no, seriously, there's these apps, and I showed them you can, like, choose your chord and strum on the screen or play a little thing.
Like
So people got
GarageBand on
into
an
it.
iPhone, like iPhone 3G status.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So after the laughs, we actually did start passing around our phones. I think I hooked it up to like an external speaker, and and people, most songs are three or four chords, so
Sure.
we got the hang of it, and it was great. We really enjoyed it. But what I realized is we were sitting there, and we were staring at our screens, like all our friends are sitting around, but like when I was, playing and singing, I was doing it. I looked like this,
Yeah.
just staring at a screen. And I realized that even though we have these whole studios and infinite sounds in our pockets and all that stuff, the ergonomics of digital music, whether it's the phone in your hands or your laptop screen, it's the same, it's the same posture. It's kind of like you're ignoring the world, and
Totally.
you're in your little zone. And so I thought, what would it take to get people back out into the world, like an acoustic guitar does, and traditional instruments, and give the ergonomics and even like the haptic feedback of traditional instruments, the muscle memory if you had developed it, but also really the thing for me was, how can we take these traditional gestures, abstract them, like it's not a guitar, it's a strum.
Right.
It's not a piano key, it's a tap or a press. It's not a violin, it's a slide. Let's look at these gestures in the abstract and then create devices. At first I was like, well, we could create a range of devices, and I was like, well, we could slam them into one
Yeah.
and create a single device that could kind of do all those gestures, not quite be any of those instruments, it's not trying to be, but let people participate in them and plug into all these amazing sounds that are in our pockets. And then the instrument one
For sure.
happened.
Yeah.
So that's what started.
Let's maybe talk about that, the origin of the instrument one, or maybe even like, I think what would be really interesting is what is even the process of designing, prototyping, getting something like this to market, basically. Like, it starts with the idea. It starts with how do we explode all these gestures like strum and slide, and how do we get them into a package, and then like getting that made. Like, I know I've seen early pictures, I believe, of an early prototype, and it looks nothing like this. It looks very different.
It was wood,
Which is cool.
yeah.
Maybe some
It
limited
was
collector's edition someday.
um, we experimented with a lot of different form factors, some of which took on more experimental, spacey kind of things, and others which were super simplified, minimalist kind of things. I think we ended up definitely in the minimalist side of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people looking at Artiphon now might think we're some, big company who has it all together. I mean, we're still startup, and even this many years later, we're trying to figure this stuff out every day.
Yeah.
So the way I started designing things and gathering people together who had different skill sets to do different parts of it is the same thing we're doing today. We have thousands of customers now rather than zero, but it's actually I feels very similar to me as it did 10 years ago. So basically, what I did is I started with that concept, did a lot of not just drawings but like user experience mapping. So UX is this field; it takes a lot of different forms, but thinking through who the users are, what they really desire, what, and not necessarily even what they're asking for explicitly, because usually that's a problem-based thing,
Hmm.
but like, what do they really want? And then which thing that they want do you want to tackle? And I realized obviously we couldn't do it all. So for for me, founding Artiphon wasn't about creating a sort of trickle down instrument model like we see almost everywhere in music tech.
Yeah.
It's designed for the pros, designed for the tradition, and then everyone else who wants to be a part of it, they can catch up if they want to.
Right.
They can take lessons. They can watch your YouTube channel or
Yeah.
whatever and learn how to do all this really difficult stuff. Um, I wanted to flip that as much as possible and say, regardless of your skill set coming in, the desire I want to address and what we're going to design around is immediately accessible sound, and really expressive sound, not just like tap here and something happens and that's all that ever happens, but
Right.
every time you tap it will be a little different, and you can really find your own way of expressing yourself, not because you can do a lot of technological patching or mapping or whatever, but because we've created these intuitive instruments. So a lot of that kind of theory or UX planning before even starting to do any kind of industrial design or electronics design or any of that. Once I figured out the basics, I looked at a couple of different technologies, and I figured rather than going super boutique, which the wood prototypes notwithstanding,
Right.
were one way to get started. But I said I really want to make this as ubiquitous as we can get it. Like, how many people could afford these? How can we make them at scale so that people, they're not these things you hang on your wall.
Yeah.
These museum pieces, they're like everyday objects. So it became how are things manufactured? And I got some experience with my other products I designed, like speakers and home electronics kind of stuff. How were things manufactured? And so then it was, what kind of processors do we use? What, are we creating a computer here, or is it really a lighter weight thing? What kind of sensors do we need to capture these nuanced gestures in a way that aren't literally strings or keys or pads or any of that,
Right.
but we could take them all in. So then I started talking with people, and finding some engineers, finding some designers, finding some people in marketing and sort of more of the consumer space, like being it products people who could translate um, some of these insights into the product design. So we really come at it from all those angles. And then we got some early investors in who believed in this basic vision, small incremental checks just to build prototypes and all that. But in Nashville, it's called Music City.
Yeah.
People really believe in music, and there's always been this thread for us of not music education just in the sense of kids in classrooms, but how can we reach a broader number of people than ever before through technology and get people into music making who just would never believe they could do it before.
For sure.
And I think, our investors and our customers, like people have caught on to that. And it's been really inspiring for me. It's kept me going this whole time.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about the audience right now, and I think in any
Yeah.
creative project, there tends to be I know for me, this is something that I've had to overcome over years of being a creative person, is especially being a very insular solo creative person. Think about your experience as a founder and having these ideas and coming up with this vision, but then the moment and realizing like, okay, I can't do all of this myself. Like, and not only can I not do it myself, I would be limiting the impact of my vision if I just tried to keep it all to myself and tried to accomplish it on my own. Do you want to talk a little bit about what was the moment like when you were like, okay, I need to build a team, like, and how do I find the right people, and how do I take this vision that I have, this very like, we've not seen things like this before, and get everybody on the team on board with the vision and get them understanding and get them to be true representatives of like that vision and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, definitely. I just simply couldn't have done anything like this alone, my whole life. Um, and it's so much more fun to work with people.
Right.
It's the only way to do it. So, I met my co-founder Jacob soon into this process, and he really helped frame the the way this would resonate with the market, and again, this sort of desire loop of uh, what people really want, and then how we can create things. So he was just great, and networking and meeting new people, constantly expanding who can even who knows we're out there. Um, the On the technical side, I'm really curious about how all the details work. I'm not the one literally writing the code for all this stuff, and there's not enough time to do it or learn it or any of that. So finding experts, in the case of Orba, which we'll get to in a
Yeah.
minute, I'm sure. Um, uh, we brought in a lot of people who were in aerospace, and
Wow.
the kind of precision that it takes to launch, SpaceX or Blue Origin rockets. And it's very precise, obviously, but it has to work. And with music, strangely enough, there's a lot of the same principle. Like, you're on stage, you're playing, it just has to work.
Yep.
And so that's been really inspiring the past couple of years, working with people with that level of attention to detail. And I think it really comes through in the industrial design and the simplicity of the product. And now, as we're building out more and more features like firmware updates and all that, there's just so much we can do. So I'm just constantly inspired by our own team, and we're always meeting people and collaborating with people like other brands and customers and artists. are feeding in. Like we just released a Max for Live um, kind of a download on our website to map Orba in Ableton. And we didn't do that alone. Like one of our beta testers was like, "Hey, can I build this? Like this, I
Yeah,
really want this. And if I build it, would you use it?" And we're like, "Yeah, man, let's do
for
this."
sure.
So it's not even just our own little team. You know, we're just a couple people. It's the whole community that we're building
Yeah.
around us who, yeah, is constantly inspiring us. And obviously that's why we're doing it at all.
Yeah,
So
let's talk about that
yeah.
a little bit too, because I know both Instrument One and Orba were Kickstarter funded, right? Kickstarter
Oh
projects,
yeah.
which I think is a cool aspect to talk about too. Like the Kickstarter community, I think what ultimately ends up happening, and what I'm seeing, because I'm a member of an Orba Facebook group now. I was encouraged to join, and it's really cool. But I think what ends up
Yeah.
happening is when you have a Kickstarter product, and they are such cool products, and they actually do
Yep.
come to life, is that your backers in your community are not just consumers, but they're also like invested in the product and invested in the journey. Do you want to talk a little bit about the choice to go the Kickstarter route and sort of like what your experience has been in that world?
Yeah, no, I was hoping we'd talk about this. So, you know, we just couldn't have gotten here without Kickstarter at all. Like um, this is a project that, or both of these were projects that we'd gotten to the point of designing them where we felt like we'd reached enough of the vision of what these could be, and we tested it really just incrementally, you know, sort of anecdotally, but we kept both of them kind of secret a little bit
Yeah.
leading up, and Kickstarter was our way of going out and saying, okay, we've taken this as far as we can go, from a business standpoint. Even like we poured everything into R&D on this. Now how are we going to get it to the next level? How are we going to manufacture this? Because launching into manufacturing thousands of things at a time is really expensive, really scary, really risky. And we're not even talking about 2020 yet, right? Like
Right.
this is, it's hard enough as is. So we went out and basically with Instrument One, we said maybe 250 people want this. That's how we kind of structured the campaign. And if so, we'll figure it out. It'll be like not even small batch manufacturing. It'll be hand built something, prototypes, 3D printed bodies, or whatever we would need to do to make sure it happened. But we would learn through that. And um, and we got over 10 times that many people.
Wow.
And so we launched into, yeah, we got over 3,000 people for Instrument One. It was the largest Kickstarter for a musical instrument in the world.
Was that a huge
And
surprise to you? Was it, were you kind of shocked and excited at the same time?
it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, we didn't know. We literally like pressed the button at 1 a.m. or whatever it was. And we're like, okay, we'll see. We've given it our best shot. We'll see what happens. And people just responded. And you're right. Like people are coming in, and with Kickstarter, it's not a purchase, right? It's I mean, they call it a pledge or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, but you're getting involved in the process of it. And so we wanted to invite people into that whole process. I mean, it's scary. Designing a product, developing, manufacturing is all scary, but I think people learn. What we've noticed is a lot of our backers over the years have, by going on that journey, they've learned more about how the things they use every day are made. We have these great conversations with them about like, oh, you know, I hadn't even thought of logistics before, or I didn't know what tooling was with, with plastics manufacturing, you know, that kind of thing. So we're not, the goal of Artiphon is not necessarily to educate people on consumer electronics type
Right.
manufacturing, but in the process, I think hopefully people are getting more aware of our sort of everyday life and how we actually make it. These aren't just black boxes that pop out of a factory.
For sure.
They're a whole process and all that. So the challenge there, the other side of it, and because now with Orba, we basically did the same thing. We kept it pretty quiet. We launched it on Kickstarter, and then it just took off. And then we had over 12,000 people. sign up on the Kickstarter at that time. And again, like world record, we didn't see that coming. We knew the instrument one worked, and then we're like, well, now we're going to redesign the the concept of the multi-instrument to hold in your hands. Do people even want this?
Right.
This isn't a normal thing. And I think the challenge overall is, and we've struggled with this throughout both campaigns, is there's these expectations that we had at the start of the campaign, our best guess of how to deliver something. And then there's a reality of the world that some of it is in our control and some of it isn't.
Totally.
And we're doing our best. We're a small team. We're trying to communicate, but designing the product, shipping it and all that, and just having now
the havoc
tens of thousands
2020.
That and this year in particular has been
picked a great year to launch a product, huh?
Hey, honestly, we did, and as hard as it's been, and as wild as the process of getting here it continues to be. I mean, we're still in the middle of it all. What drove us is that this is the year. It ended up being the year when people want this or need it or desire it the most. Like the number of people this year. There's a Rolling Stone article recently that was really good with some stats on this. Searching for musical instruments, trying a musical instrument out for the first time, buying them, has doubled or tripled this year.
Yeah.
Like there's just an explosion of creativity happening right now. So I don't think, and we didn't know that obviously.
Right.
The product at last holiday, but I think it is the perfect year to launch this, despite the struggles. I mean, we're up all night trying to figure this out because now tens of thousands of people can go out and make music at a time when they really want to.
Yeah.
When there's like
need
for music
something
in the world,
need that creative lift. That's such an optimistic take.
You're probably you.
Yeah, of course. Like that, it is like this spark of the world is seemingly on fire, but now like we have this new exciting thing in the world that can be a means of escapism, can be a means of expression, can be a means of community because you have a bunch of people getting theirs at the same time and learning together and all these things like that. I think that's a really inspiring outlook because I look at you and from a perspective of like, wow, like supply chain and like how do you get this stuff shipped out, and I think about that nightmare. But for you to hold steady on that vision, I guess it comes down to your core mission, with Artiphon is like the accessibility, getting things in people's hands, giving people the tools to be creative. I think that's super inspiring because you're very on brand. Like you did not, despite all the trials and tribulations of releasing an instrument in 2020, it actually accomplishes everything you want it to.
We chose not to compromise on the product vision and the promise to our backers and our customers. That was really hard, and there's a lot of other ways to do this. Before we leave the Kickstarter part of the conversation, hopefully some of our backers are listening in. I just I'm so thankful. Like, thank you for letting us do this, and this is something that it just wouldn't exist otherwise. It really wouldn't. We couldn't have done this on our own. We're not a big enough business to just try out new ideas and see if they work. This is how this is built, and now we're getting a flood of our backers posting their videos, letting their kids play with it, like all this amazing musical reactions to it that those just wouldn't exist if Kickstarter backers hadn't gone in. So anyway, I just wanted to very explicitly say Thank you to anyone listening, because we're really thankful.
Yeah,
so.
It makes the dream come true for sure. I have a couple questions from the chat, and I see you chat, so thank you all for dropping questions in there, and I want to kind of intersperse them in where it makes sense in the conversation. So I'm not ignoring you, chat, but thank you for dropping those questions, and thank you, Thomas, for bringing me questions from the 343 Labs chat as well. You can keep doing that as well. I think it'd be cool to talk about Orba. Really
Yeah.
quick, before we start getting into Orba and folks who don't know what it's about, I'll tell people a little bit about the school if you don't mind for a moment.
Yep.
So, everybody, today's stream is brought to you by 343 Labs, and 343 TV is an initiative of 343 Labs where we are doing daily live streaming, free educational content every single day, live streams. TAETRO Talks is the Tuesday show. We had a show yesterday, Tips and Tricks with Claire Lim. Her artist name is Daltrick. She's an Ableton certified trainer. Every Monday, she's sharing tons of Ableton, really like gold nuggets of Ableton information on that show. Tuesday is my show. Wednesday, we've got the hybrid home studio show talking about using hardware and software combined in a home studio. Tomorrow, that'll be taught by Abe Duque. Thursday, we have Theory Thursday. I know a lot of people are interested in learning music theory as it applies to music tech and music technology. That's taught by Ableton certified trainer Max Wild. Fridays, we have production basics. So this is really great for beginners. Tune in on Fridays for that. Saturdays is Selway's Techno Saturday. So John Selway, who's a techno legend, hosts that show. He's doing a plugin this Saturday, I believe, a really cool plugin. I can't remember the name now. And then the first Sunday of every month, we're doing feedback sessions where people can submit their music and all that. So if you're not yet, go to 343 youtube.com/343labs, I should say, and subscribe. Set reminders for the shows that you want to watch because we schedule them every week and you can just be ready to watch them. And just we're there. You can count on us. We're there pretty much every single day. You can watch a free educational live stream. Those people that I all just talked about are all amazing music instructors and teach at 343 Labs, which is an electronic music school online in New York and in Berlin. So if you watch one of these streams and you like the teachers that are doing like the free daily live streaming and you want to go deep with them, go to 343labs.com and check out the courses we have available because we have them available for beginners. We have like Ableton and Logic, beginner, intermediate, advanced, as well as mixing and mastering, synthesis and sound design, songwriting, music theory, all that good stuff. So if you're trying to take advantage and do a deep dive into some courses, 343labs.com is your place to go. Check that out. At the very least, subscribe to 343 Labs on YouTube so you can get the free daily live streams. But with that said, let's get back into talking about music tech. If you're just tuning in, we've got Mike, founder of Artiphon, who makes the Instrument One and now the Orba, the latest instrument from Artiphon. And we were going to get into talking about the Orba. And for those of you who don't know, for those of you who haven't seen my content with it yet, my performance and my kind of performance breakdown, I figure, Mike, you want to just give us a overview of what you got going on with Orba here?
Yeah, of course. I do want to make sure we're getting to those questions, but I'll leave that to
For
you.
sure. I'll make sure we do. How about
Okay, good.
this one? Well, this one I believe is referencing Instrument One, but let's apply it to Orba. How long did it take? The question is from Seon in the chat. How long did it take you to make the Artiphon Prototype? In the original design, did you plan for the iPhone in mind? So I think that's Instrument One base. Maybe talk about both.
Yeah.
So from
I'll do
prototype
both.
to getting it out. Yeah.
Yeah, so Instrument One was a 4-year R&D process.
Wow.
We started out and it had a dock in it originally for the 3GS, and then the 4, and then I think it was after the 5 we were like, you can't do a dock.
Let's break that. Oh, my Orba is ready. Let's break that down for people. So there was a version of this instrument that you would take your iPhone. Obviously, the iPhones were not this size, and this was not what it looked like, but you would dock the phone right into the instrument. But that was fairly common back then. That there were keyboards that did that.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it was like 30-pin cable, all that stuff.
Not very future-proof. Was that kind of the reason for pivoting, or was it just sort of a different decision?
Yeah, we wanted to go more universal than that.
Yeah.
4 years of R&D on that, and a bunch of redesigns. I think we had like 5 different sort of generations of the electronics and the design and all that. And then we launched on Kickstarter after that, and kind of figured it out. Orba has been about a 2-year process, And so longer than that in its original conception, really just the idea of this handheld, really gestural controller. But the way that, what we know of Orba today, which I'll give a quick overview,
Yeah.
has been about a 2-year process. And I think we learned a lot from the initial Instrument One design that we
Yeah.
were able to kind of get there a little faster. But it's not too fast. I mean, it's
That sounds
it's been
fast to
constant.
me. Two years to bring this like new little instrument into the world. And you know what I find remarkable too is that a lot of times, small companies do Kickstarters or whatever, put out a really cool product, and then their next product it kind of is just either unrelated or you can't even tell that they go together. But these two, like, the DNA is very clear. Like, it's very clear that these two are in the same family. They are related. Whether it's like the built-in speaker, the expressiveness, like the attention to expression, the multiple ways of playing it. I just think that that's really cool. The aesthetic, obviously, you carried the DNA through. I assume that that's a very intentional vision on your part.
Yeah, I mean the sort of minimalist design
Yeah.
overall was key. And then we wanted to apply the lessons we learned from Instrument One into Orba and make sure that someone coming from Instrument One to an Orba could kind of feel a similar vibe. It's a pretty different use case in a lot of ways. But whereas the Instrument One is really focused on translating all these traditional gestures into a digital workflow, Orba is not as much about traditional gestures like what you would do on a ukulele or even a drum or whatever, but it's about what our fingers do every day. And so, we're tapping on our desks,
Yeah.
and we are thumb texting, and we are game controllering, and even moving things around. And so and then there was actually this whole food inspiration with it too, like all these round like grapefruits
Yes.
and
The
like
slices.
little yeah, and like teacups and things. So the ergonomics were really inspired by um, everyday objects, the roundness of them, and then really the dexterity that our fingers have in the 21st century is incredible. Like, our thumbs are probably, smarter than ever before, because we're just using them nonstop. And so an instrument that kind of celebrates that, we talk about it as micro gestures.
Mm-hmm.
So the ability to get a lot of sound variation with millimeters of movement
Yeah.
is that was a big thing we were going for here. So I don't know if you want me to give a quick kind of tech overview, or
Yeah,
what do you want me
let's
to?
give an overview. I'm sure there might be some folks in the chat who haven't watched any extensive content and they're just curious what's possible.
Okay, well, I have Orba. We just launched silicone sleeves today,
Mm-hmm.
so this is like a little sleeve that goes. Well, I'll take it out of
Yeah,
here,
that's great.
and so this is the device, capacitive touch interface on the top. So think, your phone or a trackpad, um, feather touch. Like, we actually know that you're there before you get there,
That's
and
great.
it's velocity sensitive. It's super fast. Unlike a lot of other capacitive touch things, we really focused on speed and like near zero latency. Um,
Can you explain,
the
because you've explained to me before, how you have velocity sensitivity when it's a hard surface? Can you explain that to the folks?
Yeah, so velocity on a traditional keyboard, like a synth
Yeah.
keyboard, is the time it takes to get from one place to another. So from start to finish, there's a time
Yeah, like
differential, and that's how you measure velocity.
key on, key off. Like how fast the speed of that
Right,
motion.
right. So you basically have just two measurement points there. What we're doing, so capacitive touch is basically you're interrupting this electrical field, and when you do that, it happens to various degrees. So, like the theremin,
Yeah.
this is a similar kind of idea. Like the closer you get, the voltage changes. Think about it like that, but on this really micro scale, that the closer you get to this and the more you touch it, is actually interrupting that electricity, to varying degrees. And the more we sample that, the faster we sample it, we can see sort of the curve of when you're coming down and when you're touching it, and then how much area you touch it, and so on. And basically, what we're doing internally in real time is measuring all that and then parsing it and figuring out what kind of gesture you did. Did you do a very quick, I don't know if you can hear that, but
Yeah.
quick release, or did you hold?
Yeah. And that's the
And so
same pad. We should know for
right,
people that's the same pad.
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
reacting to the way you're touching it.
Just like in this case, like a traditional drum, if you hit and hold, it's gonna squelch it, or if you let it go. And so we're thinking about gestures. Like, people don't need to know that. That's not something we necessarily need to teach people, because if you're banging on pots and pans in your kitchen, you're going to get the same effect.
Yeah.
So it's almost like modeling, almost like physical modeling of gestures, not just sounds. So anyway, a lot of fun new technology with the surface interface. These 8 pads are basically, we chose 8 for a single full octave, but from a drum machine standpoint, that's not that crazy to have that limitation.
Sure.
And if you want more keys, buy a keyboard or something, or an
Yeah.
instrument one. Like, there's plenty of things that give you all the notes. This was about the creative limitation of only having a few. But what we matched all that with was, well, actually, that's a good.
Yeah. Let's talk about that too. A whole nother sensor over there.
Yeah. So motion control, and it basically, we have an accelerometer and gyroscope built in to Orba, so we can detect different types of movements and figure out what we want to do with them. So this is bump, and it actually triggers a MIDI note, and we can sense the velocity of that. And if you're using this as a MIDI controller, you can have bump trigger external anything you want.
Right.
In the case of, say, bass, tilting is mapped right now in this preset to a filter. And so, that's one thing. But we also have move and shake and these other gestural controls, in addition to what we're doing on the surface with this sort of area. You get all the motion controls underneath. So it's multidimensional in that aspect. We're sending, I think it's 7 different CCs, like,
Yeah.
all the time, potentially, for you to map in synths, or they're automatically mapped in the presets that we make.
Yeah. Ken Gruz just asks if it has aftertouch. It seems like all those gestures amount to the same effect as aftertouch, essentially, on some level.
So it does have an Orba version of aftertouch. So the reason it's called aftertouch in traditional MIDI keyboards is you press down on the key a normal amount, and then some keyboards have more. After your touch, you can go more.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of how to think about it. So what we have is pressure on here. Now, the instrument one has a, a actually pressure sensitive surface
Right.
even on a very small point of pressure. Orba works a little differently. It's about area. So if you only press a little bit, like a little bit of area, it will send a low channel pressure / aftertouch MIDI control. And if you have a lot of area on a pad, it'll send a high amount. So it's a slightly different version than just raw pressure, but it ends up being the same MIDI control.
Yeah. Cool. And I think that also answered Seon's question about surface area and speed and all that. That's cool.
I'm glad we're getting nerdy with this stuff. We can go deep if you want.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess it's worth explaining because you've been bouncing between instruments, but just the basic fact of like you've got drum, bass, chord, and lead presets.
Okay, so now we're into kind of song design.
Yeah.
So the sensors we talked about, I should mention, it has a built-in synth. It's pretty crazy what it can do on, I mean, this is a $99 product, but it has basically 15 voices that it can do all at once.
Right.
And so I'll go through and make sure I got my number right there. So drums uh, uh, is the first um, instrument, and so for each pad uh, we have a different sound. Pad 8's a little special because it's a shaker.
Whoa, I didn't even
And
know
then
that. Hold up. Hold up.
okay,
I didn't even know that.
so hold in pad 8,
This will work with
and
any
you'll
of the
hear,
kits because I think I have a different kit.
yeah,
Oh, it does work. I didn't even
I
know
think you got a
that.
little bump.
Yeah, I got the bump in there. That's
Bump and
amazing.
skate.
All right, well, I learned something new. That's great.
Yeah. So, you know, kids love it and annoy their parents with it too. It's really fun to
Totally.
watch. Um, so that's drum and pretty straightforward. I already mentioned about the, you know, a lot of these sounds you can do as an open tap or more as a press hold kind of thing. Um, Bass is monophonic, and so you can do just classic simple bass lines and then modify them, modulate however you want. Chords is a preset chord that goes in the scale. So I have this in the key of E minor right now, and you can basically just think, do you know the Nashville number system? Do you ever use this?
I do not.
Okay, so it's not just from Nashville, but we like to say that. So the idea is, let's say you're in the key of C, 1 is C, 4 is F, 5
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah,
G.
yeah. Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So it was
Roman
partly
numerals.
developed. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But it got really big in Nashville because you had all these session musicians,
And you just
and they
call
would
out
go.
1465 or something like that. Yeah.
That's all you got to do, and then it doesn't. And now we're going to be in A minor,
Yeah.
and oh, we got to go up. So now we're in B minor, and nobody cares. It's still 1465.
Yeah.
So we it's sort of a play by numbers
Yeah.
concept. So that's how we've thought of it, and you know, people can look up Roman numeral or
Yeah.
number based you know, how to play along with any song, and so that was the idea with chords as well. Lead is a pentatonic scale. So here there's fewer notes per octave, but it ends up for a lot of melodies just sort of out of the box. It's going to work with almost any chord underneath.
Yeah.
And so by the time you layer drum, bass, and chord, and you're getting to lead, you probably, you know, for just sort of casual playing, you want something that's just kind of going to fit right in. And so we thought that would be fun out of the box to have pentatonic. So all the same control, and all that's coming from the built-in synth. It's 4 notes, and then you can change your octave to so you can change right on the device what you want your octave to be. Anyway, so you get 4 on lead, 3 on chord, 1 on bass, and then depending on how you look at it, like 9 on drums. Somebody do the math. It's at least 15. So
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And then like we don't have to do a whole demo with it right now, but then also you take those sounds, you can loop them right on the device. You can set your BPM, loop, record, overdub. That's amazing. And then just not to leave this out, but because that's all amazing as a standalone device. I've been using it a lot as a MIDI controller, so just using it directly with Ableton as a Bluetooth MIDI controller nonetheless. So using it wirelessly with Ableton, all those modes still applying. So going from drum mode, lead mode, chord mode, and being able to play all my favorite VSTs and plugins in there as well. And then the same level of expression. So still being able to use that gyroscope and accelerometer and the different ways of touching the slices. So I just want
Yeah,
to.
I mean, it's an MPE controller,
Right.
that is, has all these different dimensions. A lot of, more MPE stuff is coming out every day, so
Yeah.
it's fun to be a part of that. And we're working on MIDI 2.0 as well, which is going to hopefully streamline the whole process of setting all this stuff up. There's still a lot of, you know, nooks and crannies of the MIDI world to figure out
And it
for
plays
mapping.
nicer, and that kind of stuff plays nicer with other DAWs than others. I mean, I'm an Ableton user and I love Ableton, but I will, of course, say that MP is a pain in the ass to set up, and then all the different signals that come through when you start moving this thing around, like Ableton is not quite optimized for it yet. We can only hope for the future.
Right. Very, very soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two last sort of big part. It's a long conversation to
Yeah.
describe what we do,
What
but
this
the
small
two,
device can do, you know?
yeah, exactly. But the idea was, how quickly can you make a song? And by song we mean a musical idea. It can be 5
Yeah.
seconds long, whatever you. And so that's why we put the built-in looper. But also, as you're saying, with the MIDI controller, then, who cares about the sounds inside? It's not the point. Either USB or Bluetooth, and you're controlling anything, including like traditional analog gear. You go through basically USB MIDI out to MIDI DIN, and you can tap into anything you want, or CV for that matter, if you have a MIDI to CV converter. So
Yeah.
I enjoy that stuff on the side. It's fun to, a lot of analog gear is about feeling like sort of the tactile nature of instruments again, in electronic music. And so having a controller that is tactile, and you can kind of close your eyes and just feel the music. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I end up on the weekends.
Yeah. TWD Industries asks, do they have a hand pan setting? So talking about those like hand pan drums, I believe. But I would say the experience is very close to that. Like, especially when you start playing in lead mode. Um, was that a inspiration? Because I can imagine a version of this. Go ahead and take this idea and make this happen in 2 years. But a version of this that is like, what would it be, like 5 or 6 times the size, so we can really get this kind of thing going on. Was that an inspiration?
So yeah, handpans, I mean, they're so relaxing. And actually, I was hoping to chat for a minute about kind of like, I don't know, wellness and like
Oh, for
musical
sure.
style kind of stuff. Cause I think we've talked about this before, but it's playing music is it's like a part of a healthy lifestyle,
It's
right? It's
therapeutic.
like thing. Yeah. So
But it's only
we,
therapeutic if the experience of doing it, we've talked about this before, and I've described it as like putting a guitar in an open tuning. You put a guitar in an open tuning, you hand it to anybody, whether they have any guitar experience at all, they can strum through the strings and it can feel good. But if you hand a
yeah,
normal guitar in standard tuning to somebody who has no idea, it becomes a stressful experience at some point. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
let's talk about some of the ways, like with Orba, you sit down, you pick it up, and no matter your experience level, you can make something that sounds pretty good.
yeah. So we actually designed, multiple sound packs, in the Orba app that
Yeah.
you can load onto Orba. One of them's called Ohm, OHM, and
Yeah.
another's called Ambient, and so I don't know. Can you hear that? Is that
Yes.
coming through? And so the pentatonic scale really works well, where you can really just play anything. And what we find personally, and what we're seeing people do now is to, keep it on your desk, reach over when you just need like 30 seconds to pause and play a few notes.
Yeah.
And even just the process, like that was even back to my research, like my PhD stuff. it was all where I got to with a lot of that research is people just want the world to sound, they want some control over their sonic space. Like they want a way to shut out sounds they don't want and bring in sounds they do want. And that's why we like close our windows when it's loud outside and put on headphones and, control our sonic world. Orba's a way to do that, that I hope as a musical instrument is actually more like the other objects in our lives that we, that are just sort of there. Like we hold our phones all day and we
Yeah.
kind of feels, I don't know, we're getting to the point, probably in an unhealthy extent, that it just feels right to have your phone in your hand. Like it's a sort of natural thing to feel.
And that situation that you just described, where it's like if it's on your desk, it becomes two options. It's the option of grab the phone and scroll through Twitter or Instagram or whatever, or grab Orba and just kind of be in the moment, changing your space with the sound, like when those two options are presented, at least you have the option,
You could say it's an alternative to social media,
For sure.
It's like, yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. So I want to design, back to your first question, actually, I want to design creative experiences that that are a part of people's everyday lives, that aren't these separate things that you have to carve out time for, and that you don't feel good enough at ever. I want people to feel great from their first notes, and that the instrument is just part, just toss it on your couch, like toss it in a bag. Don't worry so much about whether you're going to scratch your Les Paul or whatever.
Right.
And just get out there and make music wherever you are. And music can be ubiquitous in that sense. It doesn't have to be sacred, and only reserved for musicians. So yeah, Orba is our latest attempt to get out there and inspire people to just make sound whenever they feel like it, within a couple seconds, and yeah, just kind of feel good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very Nashville philosophy coming out there. Couple, I know you like the nerdy questions, so we had a
Yeah.
couple around. Let me make sure I can find them. So Michael Grauman asks, it seems the Orbis implementation is built to be opened up. Will there be a dev kit offered for the more technical music nerds later?
So we are still, yes, the answer is yes. We are still trying to catch up with our own sort of vision of what this can be with the feature set. So we're going to keep adding features in the next couple months here. And one of those directions we're headed is really that we've already gotten great responses from people who want to do more customizations, more mappings, either internally to Orba or externally with MIDI stuff. I mentioned that Max for Live download is a step in that direction. But yeah, we want to hear what people want to do. So, the technology in this can do a lot of different things. We need to make sure that we design it in a way that is useful for people. And so we need to hear what the use cases are.
Totally.
So if anyone wants to reach out or get on social and toss some ideas out, we'd love to help develop in that direction. For us, it's all about, it's about the music, but it's about having fun. And part of the fun of music is it's like Legos. It's like, putting pieces together and seeing what results. So yeah, I want people to tinker with it. It's because of how efficient Orba has to be on the chip, partly because of the price. There's only so much we can sort of rebuild on it or open up in that sense. But there's flexibility there. Yeah, we'd love to hear what people want to do.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, Richard Dorfner is asking, and I've seen this question a lot, especially being in the Facebook group, is about opening up the synth engine so we can create our own patches for it. Is that something you guys are thinking about for the future?
Yes, and so one of the things, the Orba synth is very powerful, but again, we had to figure out how to cram it all in this chip, so it's not like a traditional synth where we just have, the sort of normal knobs and all that. It's more of a programmed thing at this point, and it's gestural. the synth works. We designed it from the ground up to respond dynamically to all these different gestures. So it's it's still, again, a design challenge in some ways, how to make that rather than people getting it and programming it, how to make that an interface that people want to use. And frankly, I think if, there are thousands and thousands of synths out there which make incredible sounds that Orba can play all of them. So if it's a particular sound, otherwise, I'd recommend plugging into all those synths. What we're focused on with Orba Synth and customization is really letting people have a musical intention and then get there. And so, in the case of like this kind of chime sound, we designed it, we programmed it so that tilting has the sort of amp envelope dynamically. That's a gesture mapping as much as it is a sound design.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're working through now. Again, I'd love to hear what people want to do. If there's any limitations you're finding with Orba right now, or if you just have a dream of what it could do. We want to build for those experiences rather than just, make it up or expect people to learn to program and just create sort of a dev environment. We have tens of thousands of customers now who we want all of them to have fun with it. So anyway, keep the ideas coming, because that's what inspires us to keep building in these directions.
Do you find the irony or the humor in the fact that you set out to design this super accessible, simple, minimal instrument? It's not simple by any means, but simple for the person who's going to pick it up and use it. But the irony in that people now want to open it up and do all this crazy stuff with it. Like, I just think that's hilarious.
I get it. I totally get it. It's my story too. Like, coming from being a musician and playing instruments. I didn't design instruments as a kid. Like, I played them. I played what was shown to me. And then, but I was also a Lego kid. And so tearing things apart, rebuilding them was how I had fun. So I think for me, I kind of brought those things together in this to design. And I love, I don't know if you can see it. Like, I've got some synth stuff. I was
eyeing that, yeah.
Some modular playtime sometimes, and I love it. It's really inspiring. So no, I don't think it's certainly not a problem. It's not even totally ironic. I think, again, for Artiphon, the point is, even as we're giving people more things to customize or tweak or deep dive on all that stuff, we still want to design it in a way that gets people back to music. I do have my only critique of a lot of, especially digital synths. I think analog's a little different, because I don't do analog synth to find a particular sound. I do it to kind of explore what happens when you interconnect all these things. But with a lot of digital synths, you have thousands of presets in an app, in a VST or whatever that you download, and you just, like, when you actually watch people, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but if I get on, if I open up Logic or something and I just start clicking through the sounds, and you try them for like half a second, you're like, nope, right. not that. And it gets you in this mind. It's almost like scrolling social media.
True.
It's just never ending, and you're not ever satisfied. And you get, you're 2 hours in, and you didn't make any music. You just like sampled sounds.
Yeah.
And so if you want to do that, great. Like, that's fun too. We want to design products where you're creating, you're performing and expressing. And so we always want to make sure people are getting back to that. So anything that we design kind of has to go through that filter in a way, rather than just more, because there's so much out there.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you want a sound, you can probably find it these days.
Absolutely. I know we're going a little over time. I have two more questions, one from me and
Yeah,
one
no,
from the community, which is really good. I don't envy your position at all in launching a product on Kickstarter and in 2020, and you have such a optimistic and positive outlook on it in general, which is really inspiring. I wonder, and everybody I'm seeing who's getting their hands on Orba, I've yet to see a bad review. I know I'm having a great time with it. I think the people who are getting it and getting it in their hands are having an amazing time and are very happy with what they have. Do you want to just speak to some of the inevitable roadblocks or hiccups or bumps in the road that happen when getting products out to people via Kickstarter? Maybe speak to some of those folks who maybe are still waiting, who are still wondering like what's going on, who are maybe getting a little anxious about receiving their Orba.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know we touched on this a little earlier, but I'm happy to give some more color to it. So we, not only on the supply chain and then manufacturing side, but we had a lot of challenges on logistics recently. This kind of crazy thing happened with Hong Kong, China and Hong Kong, where China started blocking certain types of electronics shipping through Hong Kong. And our logistics partner got, we kind of got caught up in the middle of all that. So after like many months of delay for getting the product into manufacturing at all, and then actually getting the parts and manufacturing it, then we had them, and then we got kind of stuck in this logistics nightmare. So we've been trying to figure out for the past weeks and really the past couple months how to solve for that. We have to, we're about halfway through the whole process of getting everything out. I think at this point, we know pretty much how everything's going to happen, but they haven't all landed, obviously.
Right.
And it's so frustrating. I mean, I totally understand people's frustrations around this, and we are so frustrated and like trying every day to solve this stuff. So, I'm really sorry for the delays here. We're doing our best, and we're trying to communicate with people. I know we have a great small customer support team trying to answer everyone's questions, but a lot of this stuff we don't actually know. I mean, when you're working with external partners, manufacturers, shipping companies, all that, like there's a lot of it that's opaque and that we simply don't have the answers. So we're trying to be as transparent as we can. And yeah, the whole point is just getting it in people's hands. But it's been the most challenging thing this year is not only making it happen, but basically communicating with everyone and trying to get all the details that everyone wants all the time. It's been a lot, but I think hopefully people understand that we're just a couple of people trying to figure this out too, and we'll get there. I mean, we're getting there closer every day. So anyway, happy to answer anything out. We're an open book on this stuff.
Yeah. I think it's just interesting because on the internet, I think people assume that every company that they interface with is some big faceless company of thousands of employees and customer service people who don't care, and it's hard to adjust that expectation. But people should know that you guys are just a small creative team and you guys are trying your best, and it's not up to you. If it was up to you, you'd have Orba in everybody's hands, whoever wanted one. So it's so far beyond your control. So I don't envy that position to be in.
Well, and with the Kickstarter, the international response was incredible. Actually, for both Kickstarters, about half of our customers are beyond the U.S. and the logistics, the certifications around all that, how to get into all those territories and all that is really hard. What inspires me about it, though, just to kind of bring it back to why we're doing this and the kind of optimistic side is people are responding internationally very differently to what Orba is and what they want to do with it. And so these different cultures are seeing it in different lights. We've got a lot of people in India really excited about Orba right now, and there's tons of microtonal musical kind of things traditionally there. And so I think we could have just launched this as a much smaller project that we delivered, hand built or whatever units, and only grew there. We ended up going out and saying, "Hey, world, what do you want?" And now we're still trying to catch up with that demand. But in the end, this is going to be in 70 countries around the world, and people are going to make all kinds of music with it. That's the point. That's what we're working for every day. So we're almost there.
For sure. Amazing. Yeah. I want to thank everybody who's in the chat. I see people answering each other's questions. That's really, really helpful too, because we have time for probably one more question. I think that this is a good one from Seon over in chat. And maybe just a final good way to kind of close out this conversation is, what's your advice for a musician who wants to work on a product? What lessons did you learn when it comes to forming or making a team? I know we kind of talked about that a little bit, but if we can maybe zoom out a little bit about some lessons learned and advice for the musician who's thinking about, oh, maybe I want to do this someday.
I think deciding if you want to do it as a business or as a personal project. And so if it's a personal project, just do exactly what you dream. Like, this is about you. This is about whatever limitations you find of other instruments or technology out in the world, fix it and design it for exactly your use case. And don't worry about how it's been done before, or what people might think, or how it looks, or whatever. If it's a business, it's not about you at all. It's about what everyone else wants to do. And so it's really about studying and interviewing and, gathering a team together who knows how to build scalable things. And I've seen, not just in instruments, but in tech overall, a lot of people have ambitions to, and great ideas to get out there. But if it's not scalable and it's not meeting the market need, it's those things aren't going to match up. So it's kind of to design it in a way that's for the general public has to be a really humble approach, because it's not, it's not about your intuitions. It's not about your desires. It's about what people say. And sometimes they, what they want to do it's not even what you want to do. Yeah. And so it's weird. As a designer, it's a weird place to be in, where you're like a teacher, you're serving other people's needs. Teachers learn a lot by being in the classroom, but they learn more about themselves or about the next generation or something like that. But it's about the students. They're the reason why people teach. So I think if you're designing for other people, you just have to watch and listen and be really responsive. Les Paul was a good, or Leo Fender, these classic, even Bob Moog especially, like, he wasn't a touring musician. That wasn't the point for him. He was hanging out with musicians and listening to them and designing for them. And he changed the whole world by doing it. So anyway, that's been some of my inspiration and approach in that direction.
That's great advice. I want to thank everybody who tuned in today. This was a really great chat. If you tuned in a little bit later, this stream will be up to watch again on my channel and on 343 Labs channel. I also usually put a podcast version up in my podcast feed, which is TAETRO Radio on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find lots of good content up in that feed. Thank you again, everybody who watched. If you haven't yet, 343labs.com if you want to check out some more educational music production classes and see what's available. Streaming every day on youtube.com/343labs. And if you want to find out more about Artiphon and the Instrument One, and of course Orba, their latest instrument, you can just head to artiphon.com. Or even go on YouTube and type in Orba TAETRO into your search bar and find my session and tutorial with the Orba. And I'm definitely going to be making more. So it's great. But Mike, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. That was fun.
And thanks everybody so much for watching. This has been another episode of TAETRO Talks, 343labs.com. Check it out if you want to take a class in music production. Thank you so much for watching. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.